My name is Jolene Underwood. I am an emotional and mental health coach and a counselor in training. I wanted to talk to you today about the concept of forgiveness, particularly ways that we either misunderstand forgiveness or the ways that people have used forgiveness that's been harmful to us. Something that happens sometimes in situations where someone is trying to encourage or help an individual who's been something that's very painful, and it may have been not just hurtful but even harmful in relationship or some dynamic that they were in. So it could have been a toxic relationship at work, it could be in a spousal relationship or friends, and the harm perpetuates. But what happens is somebody who has experienced that harm, they start to experience normal consequences of that harm, and that is just the fruit of what happens when you are hurt or harmed by other people. You're going to have anger, you're going to feel different things, and you might be confused about what's happening. You might have different experiences that the listener wants to fix. And that's what we tend to do as believers all too often, is want to fix where the person is at rather than meet them in that place and connect with them. And so one of the ways that we do this is by telling people, well, you just need to forgive. You need to let that go. You're harboring bitterness in your heart, and that bitterness is going to eat you up. Here's the thing. It is true that bitterness is highly destructive in our souls, and that we are called to forgive. Those are truths. However, what's being conveyed in that moment is not helpful, and here's why. The concept of forgiveness is more of a gift or an invitation from God than it is a burden, a requirement, an expectation, an extra responsibility put on someone who has been harmed. So the dynamic that kind of plays out in conversations with other people is that the focus of responsibility becomes you. And in a harmful situation, typically that person has already experienced that, where the person who has done the harm or the hurtful thing is doing something that's expecting, that's putting undue expectations or has unreasonable burdens put onto the other person. They're putting responsibility on that person that isn't theirs to own. Now, the gift of forgiveness actually helps us own what's ours and release our tie to another person in what they need to own. So let's say you're talking to someone and you say, hey, I get that person did something that was harmful, that this circumstance was not right, but you just got to forgive. Well, now we're putting the focus on the burden and the weight and the expectation and the responsibility. However, if instead we said, you know what, I understand that this situation is painful, and first engage with that. And sometimes that could be multiple conversations of simply listening, validating their experience. We do not have to agree with someone's understanding of an experience to validate what they've experienced, okay? And that validation is super powerful. So first we come in and we connect. And then as we're connected to that person, we can see patterns developing, and we might be able to say, you know what, I see that this is really hurting you. This is destroying you. This is keeping you tied to that individual and the outcome that happens with that individual. And so the gift or the invitation of forgiveness is something that we can receive by starting out simply by putting out our hands to God and say, I don't want to be tied to what happens with that individual as a result of what they've done to me, or the beliefs of what I think should happen because of what has happened by them. I want to be free of that. I want to be free to live as the person that you've designed me to be. So God gives us this gift, and He allows us to kind of unwrap it bit by bit, or to say yes to His invitation to engage with Him in close presence and be untied from the outcome for that individual and connected to God and His ways of bringing healthy fruit and outcomes in our lives. So again, forgiveness helps us own our part in the sense that we can say, I recognize this is my part, but not taking on responsibility for what is someone else's. And it is rooted in the acceptance of truth. It is rooted in accepting this is what actually happened, These are the true feelings that I experience, and this is the reality of the relationship today. You might forgive and try to continue to engage in a relationship. You might go to that person and say, I recognize this part, your part that you need to own. And the other person may or may not be able to receive it. They may or may not be able to connect with you. You give that gift. You forgive them. You offer that opportunity. But if the reality is, if the truth is that they're not able to engage in it, they're not able to own their own things, they're continuing in a pattern that is destructive, then forgiveness also accepts that truth and moves forward with you and God, knowing that the reality is this is where it is right now, and I am free from the outcome of what happens with them because I am going to receive the gift that God has for me. I hope that helps you in just maybe some of the challenging thoughts that we put around the concept of forgiveness and gives you an opportunity to experience that freedom with Christ. It does not equal reconciliation with relationship, but it does make it a possibility, at least on your part. I hope you've been encouraged today, friends. Take care.